and brought in a person whose #1 qualification was he would not approve any non-union organizations to do any construction on state buildings, never mind whether they were more qualified or less expensive. So this place down there, they've seen a lot of Strickland. He was the congressman from down there at one time. 44% Republican. We just finished the initial poll down there. He has 70% of the vote. Ladies and gentlemen, there's something moving out there that is beyond me. It's beyond each of us individually. It's sweeping this state. And I think it's going to sweep the country. I know more about the state than I do the country. But the potential there is fantastic. And again, Jim said it just right. We are not going to be able to turn the country around, but we can put on the brakes, and particularly at the national level. Let me introduce you to a couple of other of our candidates, because when you go out and recruit, you're really proud of the people that signed up. We have a gentleman running down in South Central Ohio who is a former president of the State Farm Bureau. He's a 4-term county commissioner in his home county, and we finished his poll last week. That seat was taken by the Democrats 2 years ago, and that district is not overwhelmingly Republican. 62% for that candidate. This is a remarkable thing that's going on across the state. I went down into Hamilton County, and down there you kind of work with the county chairman. They still have a strong party down there. And the county chairman said, I don't know what to do. I've got a really good guy who is running and who's an old-fashioned, machine Republican down here, and I've got a Tea Party guy. And I said, well, then I'd let him have a primary. Let's the people pick who they ought to pick. And they picked the Tea Party guy in the primary, and he's out working door to door in a district that has a representative who is a Democrat. And he, in the last poll, indicates to us that he's up by 7 points. It's going to be a tight race, but he's still up by 7 points. All across the state, this is happening. I hope that the people of Cuyahoga County are going to have the lights come on for them and realize that there have been crooks running that county for 3 generations, and it's about damn time they did something about it. We've got some really good candidates of the traditional type, and then we've got some candidates in overwhelmingly Democrat districts that don't know they can't win, and they're out winning. And I think we're going to pick up some seats up there that we haven't had since 1971. But all across this state, this is going on. The reason I mentioned that to you this morning is I think a lot of times, particularly if you watch the major news networks, not Fox, you might get the idea that, well, gee, this is going to be one more of the same, and that's not true. And people like yourselves who get out and do that door to door, that is crucial. All of our candidates have helpers that we have retained. We've hired them. Hallie Wolf is helping me. It's important to have somebody that can do the organizing work and so forth. Those people make sure that the candidates get out 4 hours a day in order to get door to door. And at this point in time, and I don't know whether we're going to announce this publicly or not, we may sit on the information for a while. This next weekend, the Republican candidates for the House of Representatives will have knocked on 1 million doors in the state of Ohio. Never done before. And I'm so proud that so many of them have done that. We will never have as much money as the Democrats have. We do not get to take money away from working people, pull it into a union fund, and then send it out as campaign support. We don't have that kind of support. We have to raise our money. And very frankly, at this point in time, we have right about 35% to 40% of what the Democrats have. But if people are willing to go out and do what they can do in terms of local ground warfare effort, if they can do that, then they can win. And in this county particularly, we have a lot of people who are willing to make that effort, who are willing to do what has to be done. We have an absolutely impossible congressman in the southern part of this county, and we really ought to have people out there helping Jim Renacci, and up north helping, Ganley's great. I don't know how many of you have seen him speak. What a show, huh? He is something. And Jim Renacci obviously will take more wisdom about business and what you have to do to turn an economy around to Washington than 90% of the congressmen ever dreamed of. So we have an opportunity here to have a tremendous impact, and it's just something that can be done. And there's plenty of time yet. Some people are saying, oh, it's too late. Personally, I wish the election were tomorrow. Looking at my polls, it's unbelievable. Out of all of my contested races, and there are 20 of them, there are 20 of them that we're working on, we only need 4 seats to take control of the House. But we need at least 10 seats to cause a revolution like Reagan did. We have over and over looked at these polls. We're studying them carefully. We use a guy that some of you may remember. There was an election in Massachusetts where the people decided the congressional seat belonged to them and not to the Kennedy family. That pollster is our pollster. And boy, are we getting intelligence and information. We get reports about this thick. Some nights I think if I read another one of these things, I'm going to have somebody start reading them to me. But at the end of the day, we know what's going on out there at the grassroots. Strickland, at this point, has 38% of the vote. John has 52% of the vote. So that's a report from the campaign front. As I get around the state, I'm really excited about the candidates. As I say, I could tell you about 4 or 5 more stories about really outstanding candidates that we've been able to recruit. But I think you get the idea of it. And we are giving them support at the grassroots, and we are campaigning without the necessity of using the money that is necessary in a lot of these campaigns. And I think it's going to work. And if it does, it'll revolutionize politics in Ohio. And about time, really. This business of seeing who can raise the most money is not really the best measure of who's going to be the best public servants. The other fascinating thing to me in Ohio has been the change in terms of how the Democrats have operated the House of Representatives. I have had the honor of serving there originally in '68, and then I was a Court of Appeals judge for 8 years, and then I went back to the House because I believe that that's the area where we can get things done for the people. I always refer to it as the people's house, because that's what it is. The House is 110,000 population. You can visit with people, you can get input from people in your districts at that size, but perhaps most important, you can just walk away when the time comes. And people have to learn about that. We have a number of Democrats down there who have absolutely no comprehension of what they're doing. They don't understand the House. They haven't read the Constitution of the state of Ohio, admittedly a bulky document. But at this point in time, this House has been run in a way that is unprecedented in how bad it has been. One of the great statistics we got out of the House this time, now we're looking at a state that's losing jobs at an unprecedented rate. 400,000 plus jobs have been lost in this state under this administration, and they have done about it zip. And let me just give you an idea why. In the entirety of this General Assembly, we have had 109 days scheduled for floor work in the House of Representatives. We have had sessions on 49 days. 109 scheduled, 49 done, canceled 60 for a 55% cancellation rate. Is anybody here puzzled as to why we have not aggressively gone into the job creation business? We have introduced over 20 bills that would provide inducements to employers to create jobs. And it was done by some of my freshmen. I'm just so proud of that class. They're wonderful. And they have turned out these bills one after another. They didn't do it sitting in a committee room. They did it going out and visiting business people, Chamber of Commerce members, my favorite, the National Federation of Independent Businessmen. They went out and talked to them about what do you need to create jobs, and they put in 20 bills for that purpose. Some of them got a hearing, some of them never got a hearing. Some of them were stuck into Democrat bills, one, and I might add, the Democrats didn't get that bill straight, they left out part of it. But that's close for government work. The end of the day, at the end of the day, this state, under this governor and this House leadership, have ignored the plight of Ohioans who need jobs. Flat ignored it, and they run around and talk about how they've done this or done that to create jobs. It's a pack of lies, and that's the only way to describe it. We have to have a House that is willing to concentrate on that. The Committee on Job Creation, the committee, that's where the work gets done. Did they meet 3 times, Dave, or twice?
Twice.
Twice. Wow. That makes me mad. We have the ability to do good things for Ohio, and they have the ability to play politics. And it's just disgusting, very frankly. And the numbers are there. And they're going to have huge splashy ads on television telling how they created jobs. Well, first of all, the statistics don't support it. Show me where those jobs are. But secondly, they didn't even try. It's one of the worst sessions I've ever seen. Second, we had a situation in which the governor had all these ideals that he talked about. For example, the governor was opposed to gambling in this state before he was in favor of it. That was one of the most amazing things to me that happened. As a practical matter, he had spoken against it, and I'm not saying people ought to be for or against gambling. I'm talking about what their word is worth. What is their word worth when they give it to the people of the state of Ohio? The Democrats, he always said that what we need to have is clear-cut effort to delineate between these fees that people charge as opposed to taxes. Fees are taxes. Fees are taxes. He said it over and over. He said that until he brought in a fee for hospitals and nursing homes that's going to take $900 million away from those institutions that we all rely on to take care of those who are ill, injured in traumatic ways, and senior citizens who are in the nursing homes. And then he was in favor of, just think of that, $900 million. One of the great things that Ohio has, and particularly our region, is an unprecedented health system. The King of Saudi Arabia can go to any darn hospital he wants, and he goes to the Cleveland Clinic. And it's time for us to recognize that, and not recognize it by taxing those entities. He was opposed to these fees before he was in favor of it. He then, of course, in the area of tax increases was very clear. Very clear. We can't have a tax increase when we have the kind of economy that we have today. Well, that's right. That's good economics. And yet, he then supported and really cooked up House Bill 318, which is a retroactive tax increase. It's not just a tax increase, it's retroactive. Those of you who paid taxes throughout the last year, now during this year, find out that the taxes you paid weren't adequate to cover your liability under the Ohio income tax. They went back and actually started, already your withholding had been done at a lower rate than it is today. That tax increase they deny is a tax increase. It's a postponement of the rollback. A retroactive postponement. That's another lie. He was opposed to a tax increase before he was in favor of it. As we look at what's going on here in Ohio, we have to be really embarrassed because we're next door to Indiana. Indiana is taking our businesses out of this state one after another. The governor is totally devoted to it. In Ohio, we have a Department of Development, or I call it the Department of Non-Development, which really doesn't do anything at the end of the day. They have about 1,000 employees. 100 of them are devoted, supposedly, to job creation, and the others are engaged in welfare programs. That's not how you develop a state. You develop it by job creation. We have young people leaving our state every day for the simple reason they can't get a job here. 5 years ago, one state only created 50% of the new jobs in America. Texas. Texas has a backbone. They stand up to the spenders, and they have been very, very successful. We have a lot of young people going to Texas, North Carolina, other places. I don't mean that we're in the same shape as, say, California, or it's pronounced, I think, California. It's not that, but it's bad. We are not in the, we are 47th in terms of the number of jobs created in this state and that are created in the country. Ladies and gentlemen, when Jim Rhodes was governor of this state, we were #1. Never forget that. Jim Rhodes did the job. I'll never forget one time I got a call from our Chamber of Commerce here locally, and they said, we have this company that's going to open a new plant, and Medina's close enough to the turnpike that maybe they can get that particular development. And so I went down to see the governor. The governor always said, when he was talking to groups of legislators, if you hear about a business that wants to come to Ohio, for heaven's sakes, let us know. So I went down and told him who it was and what their phone number was, and so Jim called him directly, and at that point in time said to him, we're going to be out tomorrow morning to talk to your officers about building in Ohio. And I said, Governor, I got roll call votes tomorrow. And he's giving me this. And besides, you had to fly in that DC free. Jim always didn't try to spend too much money on overhead. It was fun to fly along in it because the cars passed you underneath. You kind of keep track of how it was going. But Jim, Governor Rhodes, pardon me, he did not mind being called by his first name. He was sort of a regular guy. He had, a lot of times people get confused between education and intellectual ability. Jim had finished almost a quarter at Ohio State, never went beyond that. He went over there, visited with them, brought them back, put money into the schools here locally. He brought them to Medina, single-handed. One of the most favorite things I remember about him was Honda. Honda, he got word from some of the bankers that generated paper for us when we sold bonds and so forth, that some Japanese car company wanted to build in America, so they'd have an American car. And Rhodes got a ticket to Tokyo, along with 2 aides, and over they went. He didn't know where he was going. He didn't know whether it was Toyota or Honda or who it was. He went in to see bankers in Tokyo who sold our paper over there, bonds, and they said, we think it's Honda, but Honda's very secretive. Mr. Honda didn't like people to know what he was doing. So Rhodes went out to see him. This had to be one, I can't imagine it. Now Rhodes spoke English as a second language, and and Mr. Honda didn't speak it at all. But the two of them, because they came from really difficult backgrounds, Jim from the Depression and Mr. Honda from World War II, they all of a sudden they got along. And the next thing we know, Mr. Honda's down in the cabinet room, and he's being driven all over the state and so forth. Honda came to Ohio. Honda was very successful, obviously, here, and has continued to be that way. All because somebody reached out. Governor Strickland had lunch one table away from the head of National Cash Register at a big banquet. The president of National Cash Register was right there. He didn't talk to him. This is about 2 months before National Cash left Ohio, after 125 years of creating jobs and so forth. This is out to lunch. This is horrible to have our state treated that way. We have to get somebody in the governor's office who knows how to create jobs. Now, John has been attacked for creating jobs. He was at Lehman Brothers. Incidentally, he was not in charge of Lehman Brothers. For those who might be confused about that, I have a dear friend in the House of Representatives who had a Chrysler dealership, and he didn't destroy Chrysler. And that neither did Jim Rhodes, or pardon me, neither did John Kasich have anything to do with the collapse of Lehman Brothers. He was working out of Columbus, creating jobs, though. He has the ability to do that, he has the desire to do that, and he has the drive to do it. Now we're going to face serious financial challenges. This governor's last really important and big contribution to Ohio was to create an $8 billion deficit. 20% of our budget is in deficit, and he would not cut back spending in any way, shape, or form. He created new taxes, he created new gambling, all these other things, but he didn't cut back spending. So when John and I walk in the door, God willing, we're going to have to come up with $8 billion. People like my dear friend Dave Hall over here going to have to help us to come up with the answer to that kind of a problem. But this governor just didn't get the job done. Kasich can, and he will. He did two things in his life that I think all of us could be proud of. He created jobs, and he's being attacked for that, of course. And then he also balanced the federal budget. Balancing budgets kind of in his background, and it's going to be essential for the background of any new governor in this state. I walked in, the first day I walked into his headquarters, we were meeting on budgetary matter. I looked and I thought I recognized the guy behind John's desk, and I did. He had sold his home in Washington and moved to Columbus, and he's the guy who did the technical work to help John balance the budget. It's not just John, his people are loyal like that, and there he was. He was still on congressional staff, he resigned and came out here to help us do that. This is a very challenging time, it's a difficult time, but we have people in place to do what has to be done. One of the things that has troubled me the most about the House in this session is the fact that we have a lot of people there who really think they're important. In fact, their importance transcends that of most anybody I've ever worked with. It's a mess. And I just want to give you an idea of the mindset and the mentality that underlies their attitude and the attitude of people in Washington. 41 Obama White House aides owe the IRS $831,000 in back taxes. The federal employees generally owe, across the nation, owe $1 billion in back taxes to the Internal Revenue Service. They're still working for the government. They haven't been put away in jail. And who are some of those people? Well, Tom Daschle, as Rush says, Puff Daschle. Tom Daschle was picked to run Health and Human Services, and then they found out that he hadn't declared $120,000 of his income, and somebody at that point in time at least thought that was a bad thing. And then Timothy Ginther, now he's in charge of the economy, you know. Timothy Ginther owed $42,000 in back taxes and penalties, which is one of the agencies that he'd be in charge of as Secretary of the Treasury. Under Ginther's expert guidelines, the U.S. economy has been, gee, like a guy that couldn't pay his taxes. As you go on down through it, the one that really aggravates me the most, I guess, is that in the House of Representatives, 421 employees owe a total of $6,524,892. In the Senate, 217 owe $2,774,000. These are the people that are making the laws for the United States of America, who have committed the obscenity of the Internal Revenue Code, and they are in a position where they aren't paying their taxes. Is this America, or are we falling through some kind of time machine? What in the world is going on? And finally, and there are a bunch of other ones here, finally, over at the Justice Department. The Justice Department are the prosecutors for the federal government. They're the people who are in charge of enforcing the law. $14,350,152 in taxes. Now that's terrible. The whole business in terms of not paying your taxes is terrible. But what's worse is it shows a group of egomaniacal people who think they're more important than anybody else in the world. They're the only ones who have solutions, and they're almost ruining this country. Those same people. And it's time for the average citizen to have an understanding of what's going on. You're not the average citizen. You get it. You're here. I'm preaching to the choir. Amen? But at the end of the day, a lot of people don't know this. They don't understand it. and we have to get out there and reach those people. This country was not built by people who thought they were more important than anyone else. This country was built by people who knew that they had an opportunity in this country that other people throughout the world just never would have unless they came here. I'm really upset about this immigration thing. You know, here we are in a position where we have people coming into a country that's got job inadequacies, and those people are getting jobs, or they're joining mob or whatever, but those people are coming in here illegally. When I was a boy, it was wonderful. We had young people in our school whose families had come from DP camps in Europe, with Germans, and I remember an Italian, and we had people coming here who wanted to come here, who were willing to do the work that was required to come here, who looked at that Constitution, who had to study it. And today, because of the federal government's total inactivity on the border, we have people coming here who really don't necessarily want to be Americans. They want the right to speak Spanish in school. They want the right to have all federal court documents done in Spanish. That's not the United States of America. This is the melting pot. And we have a situation here today which is very, very much unlike that. And that has to be remedied because those people are on welfare. Those people are in school situations where they have to be taught as a